Let me tell you the story of a typical American guy. Let's see if you can relate. He was born into a family of four in the San Francisco Bay Area, supportive, loving parents, and a big sister. Great education, amazing teachers. He was in love with basketball and had hoop dreams of his own. Not the best student, he struggled with some personal things, but he always kept the ship afloat and managed to scrape by. He had plans to go to college and was just hoping that he'd get accepted somewhere. Overall, he was a good kid. He was respectful and kind, even if his teachers often thought him aloof. In truth, he was painfully shy and awfully unsure of himself. Not a great self-image, but what high schooler does. He wanted to have friends, he wanted girls to find him attractive, and he didn't want people to think he was stupid. At first, he stayed away from parties, and in fact, he wasn't really getting invited to any. But eventually, he decided he wanted to get out there socially. So he started to try to find ways in, and eventually, he started to feel accepted. He wasn't a fan of the idea of drinking and doing drugs, and at that point, it seemed so unnecessary. Just being around people and feeling like he was a normal teenager was thrilling enough. But he figured that at some point, he would at least give beer a try. He had his first drink in the backyard at a party during the spring of his sophomore year, and the first time he got drunk was with a 40-ounce beer at the park the following summer. Welcome to Stone Cold Moderation, a thinking man's journey toward a healthier relationship with alcohol. I'm your host, Chase Lee. Let's continue with our story. So the rest of high school went along without any major incidents. He continued to struggle with his mental health, many adolescents do, but in terms of his alcohol consumption, he was fine. Sure, he frequented the beer pong table at parties. Kobe. But he didn't get drunk very often. He actually liked the taste of alcohol, but he never felt like he needed it in order to have a good time. He made new friends, he even managed to get a girlfriend, and he made some memories. High school ended, and that's when things started to accelerate. He decided to take a gap year and travel before starting college the following year. He started to make friends with people much older than him and began seeing the significance of alcohol as a social lubricant. All of a sudden, he felt small in a big world, and damn, the rum was cheap. But at that point, it was fine. He could drink all night and still wake up and have a day the next day. All of his older friends kept telling him, man, just wait till you're older, the hangovers are gonna get you. They were right. The year after he went to college, and well, college was college. The parties, the sleep deprivation, the shitty food. It was chaotic and vulgar and absurd and beautiful. And of course, many natties were crushed and many fireball shots were downed. And although all of this extreme binge drinking was seen as normal in this wonderfully ludicrous collegiate world, the shit really affected him. The number of times he ended up throwing up violently due to binge drinking, impossible to count. And although he was never taken to the hospital for alcohol poisoning, as if that's some sort of accomplishment, he had some truly frightening moments when he felt his body beginning to succumb to the amount of toxins he had just consumed, and he would end up forcing himself to vomit, just as a precaution. So responsible. And the hangovers. Wow. Not blessed with the superpower of being able to study while hungover. He spent many a Sunday stuck in bed recuperating when he should have been in the library. And on top of that, the guilt, shame, and self-loathing that inevitably came with it. He also started to do some risky things while intoxicated. He started to drink and drive on a fairly consistent basis. and he didn't really think he was putting himself or anyone else in danger. He started to mess around with some other drugs, more serious ones, and he did some things he wasn't proud of. He also had some risky sexual encounters while under the influence. But worse, being drunk made it easier to self-destruct and isolate himself from the people he cared about. He ruined some very important relationships while intoxicated. But still, all that was more or less normal, and of course, there was always someone worse. Then, for some terrible and tragic reason, he graduated and was thrust into the real world. He did some more traveling, and then he became a teacher. And suddenly, he had some real responsibilities. For the first time in his life, other human beings truly depended on him. His students could tell when he wasn't 100% on Monday morning. It was obvious. The dark circles under his eyes, the beads of sweat on his brow, the defeated posture and sluggish speech patterns. Not once did he ever drink on a school night and show up to class hungover, but it didn't matter. If he partied on a Saturday, he was not his best self on Monday. In fact, he found that if he drank heavily during the weekend, like he had done since age 16, he wasn't back to normal until Wednesday or Thursday of the following week. He also found that he was starting to black out more. A weekend getaway with friends would undoubtedly turn into a rum-fueled bender, of which he would retain only a few fuzzy memories. He knew that he had had fun, but so much was missing. Moments of joy and exuberance that he would have liked to have kept, but he just couldn't remember. It made him sad. And alas, as his grown-up friends had predicted many years before, adult hangovers were the fucking worst. Just like in college, a hangover after a wild night out meant a day in bed the next day. Shades drawn, Netflix on, 2 Gatorades, 2 naps, and a delivery of wings just to get back to neutral, or somewhere near neutral. And with that, the guilt and isolation was worse. It pained him when he was not mentally or physically available to his students on Mondays, and he found that alcohol was damaging his mental health even more than before. He might have had a great week at school, and then drank heavily on Saturday, and even if he'd had a good night out, he'd be depressed as shit on Sunday, and on Monday, and Tuesday, and on and on. Even 3 nights a week of drinking in college didn't do this to him. Something had changed. Binge drinking would now directly result in a plunge off an emotional cliff. Why did he continue to do this to himself? He started to realize that at some point, he would need to make a change. But the thought of a life without alcohol terrified him. How will I party without alcohol? He thought. I can't dance all night without alcohol. How will I cue up the courage to talk to girls at the bar without alcohol? Am I even fun without alcohol? Nevertheless, his curious mind led him towards doing a bit of research. He started doing some reading, and he watched some informative YouTube videos, and he decided he was going to try something. What if I can still have the same exact social life and do the same things I did before, but without ending up with a massive hangover the next day? What if I can be my best self 100% of the time? He decided that he would make some rules for himself and he would give it a try. He called it his drinking commandments. Commandment number 1, thou shalt not drink while partying. Commandment number 2, thou shalt not exceed 3 drinks in one day. Commandment number 3, if commandment 2 is broken, thou shalt go home immediately. So he put his new rules to the test, and they worked, for the most part. After several nights out, he found that his system wasn't perfect and needed to be tweaked, but, more importantly, his hopes were confirmed. He found that he could indeed have the same social life as before, and even better, without overdoing it. He found that he could go out more often, stay out later, and still feel great the next day. He found that he could meet friends for drinks in the afternoon and keep it together. And, last but not least, he found that he was happier. He found that he suffered less episodes of depression, that he could control his anxiety more effectively, and that he had more energy each day to live the life that he wanted. So, naturally, he decided to make a podcast. He decided he would like to help others and help himself by starting a discussion about why we drink, the consequences of our drinking, and what we can do about it, in the hopes of creating a community of like-minded individuals who are seeking to make some changes, improve, and live better. So, please join him on this journey, engage in the conversation, and develop your own ideas. Welcome to Stone Cold Moderation. Hello, world. Again, welcome to Stone Cold Moderation. I'm your host, Chase Lee. Thank you guys so much for being here. This podcast has been a dream of mine for some time now. It's awesome to finally make it happen. So thank you guys so much for listening. Like I said during the story, I created this podcast to basically share my experiences concerning alcohol, help as many people as I can, and help myself at the same time. Yeah, was just talking about my experiences, my newfound wisdom with this lifestyle change that I've started to do now, which has been great for me in so many ways. And that story was about me, by the way. I'm hoping that was obvious. Yeah, that was like my life story. There you go. And hopefully with this podcast, I can continue to move in a positive direction. A lot of people around me have been a little bit surprised that I've started this project. Currently taping this episode in March of 2020. Right now I'm 28 years old. A lot of the people close to me have been surprised that I'm doing this because, I don't think a lot of people thought that I had a problem with alcohol. I'm not somebody who identifies as an alcoholic, and we'll get more into that later, exactly what that means. But I knew that I had a problem. I knew it for a long time. I knew it for many, many years. I knew that the lifestyle that I was living, I was going to need it to at some point change. It was kind of just a matter of when and not if. But like I said, during the story at high school, I was pretty normal. I was not somebody who, I guess you could call me a late bloomer into having an alcohol problem. In high school, I was fine. I didn't start drinking until I was about 16, and which I consider to be pretty late. And I never really got out of control. I was always somebody who I actually preferred driving to parties, and I wasn't a drunk driver at this point. Preferred driving to parties, just preferred kind of being a chauffeur to my friends. At that point really didn't enjoy so much the feeling of being drunk. So I was definitely not somebody who other people would look at and say, oh, that guy has a problem. That guy's out of control. That definitely was not me until I went to college. Did I start to think that maybe I was going down the wrong path and maybe I have a problem? College, it's so strange in our culture, at least in the US, how much we normalize binge drinking. How it's glorified, how kind of like the fraternity lifestyle is glorified, and how college kids are doing things that are so incredibly dangerous and so incredibly harmful, and it's just seen as normal. Somebody throws up on the beer pong table, that's normal. Somebody breaks a window and cuts their hand open. Somebody gets into a fight. All of these things that are kind of fueled by alcohol, and they're glorified, and people are kind of, they're made out to be heroes because of this, and it's just very laughed at. And obviously in college, I had a ton of fun. I made the best friends, like so many other people, the best friends of my life in college, and some amazing memories. But looking back, It was just incredibly dangerous. And that's when I started to get into some pretty dangerous patterns. Like I mentioned in the story, I'm the kind of person who, if I'm hungover, I'm done. I basically go full vampire mode, in bed all day, blackout shades on, not gonna get up to do anything besides eat, call for delivery, drink Gatorade. It's terrible. Alcohol has always affected me very strongly. I'm the kind of person who, if I take a drink, immediately I feel it. Right, so I can get drunk pretty quickly. So I got into some problems when I was, in the college environment trying to compete with people. That was very actually dangerous for me. And I think more significantly, I'm a person who has struggled since my adolescence with mental health, which is a topic that we're going to talk about a lot, hopefully, in this podcast. I guess you could say your run of the mill anxiety, depression, if you can call it that. But it's definitely been a struggle since I was about 12 years old. And it was clear to me around probably the age of like 19, 20 that drinking this amount is really not doing me any favors, especially with my mental makeup. And this just got worse and worse and worse over the years until the point where I understood if I'm going to get drunk, I am going to completely fall off an emotional cliff, and I'm going to pretty much hit rock bottom, just because of the alcohol. Could have nothing to do with what's going on with my life. I could be completely content, be having a really good week, doing well in work, happy. If I binge drink, I get drunk. The next week, I flatline, and it got worse in my 20s. As I got into my first job, I was living outside of the country. I was kind of strangely isolated, and I think maybe that had something to do with it. In college, when you're hungover, somebody else is hungover. Everybody's hungover. Everybody's in the cafeteria stumbling around, and it's kind of fun, right? You laugh about it. You laugh about what happened the night before. Blah 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 blah. As an adult, not so much fun. You're kind of just by yourself and kind of just dealing with your shit. And as I got into my mid-20s, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And right, to be quite honest, if I got drunk, it would take me a week, probably a full week, to get back to normal, to the point where my energy was back to normal, to the point where my mood was back to normal. And it was very clear to me, this is not sustainable. This has got to stop. I've got to do something about this. And just the fact that I could not be a productive adult while I was drinking this way, while I was doing my weekly or bi-weekly or whatever binge drinking, realizing that if I am an adult who's trying to be productive, trying to move ahead in my life and my career, trying to just be a happy person, if I am being this hungover 10 weekends out of a year, right? That's 10 weeks out of 52 weeks that I'm not my best self, essentially. And I probably drank a lot. I drank a lot more than that. So I was kind of estimating that, in my life, maybe half of the time I'm my best self, right? Because the other half of my life, I'm nursing a hangover. And I guess there's people out there who can be hungover and can be drinking constantly and still be productive and still be close to their best self. Not me. So as I got into my upper 20s, I realized that. And I think that more than anything is probably what prompted me to make these changes, along with the fact that I understood this is destroying my mental health. This is not sustainable for me at all anymore. I think why I decided to moderate as opposed to just stopping and going alcohol free completely which is what many people decide to do, and which I totally support, and we'll talk a lot about that as well, is because, again, I didn't consider myself to be an alcoholic. I wasn't somebody who was dependent on alcohol to just get through the day. Was never somebody who, for example, drank during the week. I was not somebody who ever drank by myself, was not somebody who drank to make me feel better, and was not somebody who, if I had one or two drinks, I would end up having 25 after that. I was always somebody who would drink when I was like partying, and in those situations, I had problems controlling my consumption. But I was not somebody who was drinking every single day, who was dependent on alcohol just to make it through the day. So at first, I was thinking, well, maybe I should just go alcohol free completely. And when I started to moderate, I went out many times, just social events and whatnot, and didn't drink. And that was when kind of the light bulb went on. I was like, oh, I can actually do this. I can actually not drink and still have a good social life. But then kind of thinking about my life in the future, and if I'm on the beach, for example, and I just want to drink a beer, I think I can handle that. If I'm having a nice dinner, I want to have a glass of wine to go with that, I think I can handle that, right? If my coworkers invite me out for drinks after work, I think I can handle that, right? Even if I'm out at a big event, I think I can handle that. But again, this is something that was a personal choice that worked for me, which I understand will not work for everyone. But that's why I personally decided that moderation was going to work for me, because it just didn't seem necessary for me to completely cut out alcohol out of my life 100% altogether. So basically now, my relationship with alcohol now, during the story I talked about, I had these drinking commandments. Those were kind of my rules for drinking. Modified that, simplified that, right? And now all I have is, I call it the rule of 3. Basically, can't have more than 3 drinks in a day. So from when I wake up to the time that I go to bed, right, cannot have more than 3 drinks. So if I'm, for example, at the beach, or I'm at a day party, or anything, have 1 drink there, that's number 1. Okay. If that night something else happens, I have another drink, that's 2. Something else happens later, that's I have another drink, that's 3. And I created that rule because simplicity for me was very clear, and it kind of eliminated the anxiety. A lot of people who I have communicated with in like Facebook groups, a lot of people who are trying moderation, they have these big, long, massive lists of rules that I think are kind of insane, honestly. They have, you can't drink. I can't drink when I'm feeling bad. I can drink on the weekends, but I can only drink wine. And I don't know. I can't drink after, when I'm at a bar, and I can't, right? They have just all these rules that I think for me create a lot of gray area and create a lot of unclarity, which I think creates more opportunity to end up just losing control. So for me, rule of 3, I can't have more than 3 in a 24-hour period, and it's been working. So how often do I drink now? I honestly don't drink any more or less frequently than I did maybe even in college. I wasn't somebody who drank a lot during the week, not somebody who was trying to do it every day. So I would say now, most weekends I probably have a few drinks. I would say I very rarely go out and drink on back-to-back days. So to put that into numbers, I would say per month, I probably drink on maybe, I would say 5 or 6 occasions, and again, never exceeding 3 drinks in one day. And the changes have been immense, absolutely immense. I'm so much more productive. Again, I'm not constantly nursing a hangover. I don't have to sleep as much, right? I just have more energy all the time. My moods are more stable, and I'm enjoying my social life even more. Before, I was actually very anxious about drinking in itself, right? I would actually go and I would kind of like circle dates on the calendar, and I would be like, okay, this day I'm gonna drink, and then 2 weeks later on this day I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna get smashed, and that's how I would kind of organize my life, and that caused me a lot of anxiety because in the days leading up to that, all I could think about was the alcohol, and I'm gonna drink, and I'm gonna try to have so much fun, and it made me a little crazy. Now, since I know exactly what I'm gonna do, there's not this suspense of, oh, I'm gonna go out and am I gonna lose control? I don't know what's gonna happen. Now I know exactly what's gonna happen, and I can go out more. I can go out 2 nights on a weekend if I want to, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. Again, if I go to a bar, I can actually talk to people. I can actually connect to people. I can look at them in the eye. Um, and I'm never thinking, oh, do people know how drunk I am? Right? I realized that when I was drinking a lot, I still had that anxiety, even though I was very drunk. I was always kind of judging myself. I was like, do people know that I'm so drunk? Do people know that I'm like nearing a blackout right now? And that was just me. That was in my drunk mind. I was able to kind of have those conversations with myself. Now I don't have those problems. Now I just kind of enjoy the situation, and it's made my life a lot better in that way. But no, I mean, by far the most impactful thing is just having more energy, being more productive, having my mental health just kind of stable at all times instead of fluctuating wildly due to my crazy drinking habits. And to reiterate again, as someone who has struggled with my mental health for quite some time, to basically eliminate that evil from my life, to eliminate the possibility of me getting super drunk and falling off this emotional cliff because I have a crazy hangover, to know that that's not going to happen to me anymore is extremely exciting and very encouraging. So I'm very content with the progress I've made so far, and I'm very excited to share this journey and share this with the world. So onward and up. So a very important topic of discussion here, and also a very important topic in the sober living community in general, is defining what an alcoholic is and defining what alcoholism is. Because depending on who you talk to, people are going to have a different definition for that, and it's extremely important, and it's actually a very contentious issue. I've found when talking to alcoholics, whether it be in AA meetings or through Facebook groups, it's very kind of a controversial issue, very contentious. So Alcoholics Anonymous, which is one of the largest sober living communities in the world, if not the largest, their contention is that alcoholism is a disease, which if you are afflicted with this disease means that you have lost control of your drinking. And essentially, there's no cure to this disease, but if you follow their 12-step program, you can get sober. So again, the idea of alcoholism as a disease is an extremely fundamental pillar of their entire approach and of their belief system. Of course, not everybody is in agreement with that. A book that I've recently read, which is a pretty popular book out there in this sober living community, is by an author named Alan Carr. It's called The Easy Way to Control Alcohol. And his main argument is that alcoholism is not a disease. Alcoholism is a product of social conditioning. It's not biological, so to speak. And that essentially people make themselves alcoholics through again, social conditioning, growing up in environments where alcohol is accepted as something you're just going to do. And over time, people eventually lose control. But since he sees alcoholism as not a disease, he argues that you can reprogram yourself to rejecting alcohol and cure yourself, essentially. And he argues that it's quite easy if you follow his program and you follow his steps, that it's not too difficult to do. He cites the example that for many, many years, alcohol companies have been trying to convince the public that it's so difficult to quit, that it's not going to be worth it to quit, that you shouldn't even try it. Alan Carr obviously disagrees with that. And I would definitely recommend this read. It's an especially good read as an introductory book into kind of this world, and I will leave some links to that in the notes of this episode. But much more important than talking about what other people think, let's talk about what I think. So my view is that I see alcoholism as kind of a spectrum, right? I think there's different degrees of severity. And when I say alcoholism, I'm referring to alcohol abuse, drinking alcohol irresponsibly. An alcoholic, therefore, is somebody who is at the extreme end of the spectrum. And I believe is somebody who is dependent on alcohol. So like I was talking about earlier, somebody who needs it just to get through the day, they're doing it every day. If they start, they can't stop. Again, dependent on alcohol. So to answer your question, do I consider myself to be an alcoholic? No. Have I ever considered myself to be an alcoholic? Actually not. Do I think I had an alcohol problem and that I abused alcohol? Absolutely. Right? So again, I see alcoholism as a spectrum. I think an alcoholic is somebody who is dependent on alcohol. Important to say right now that alcoholics might not be able to moderate. Obviously, this is a podcast and a program that's going to be dedicated to talking about moderation and promoting moderation. But for people who are alcoholics, might not be possible. Not everybody is going to be able to do moderation. It's not for everyone. And I would certainly not recommend it to anyone who is doing sober living, who is on the wagon. I would definitely not recommend somebody like that hearing about moderation and saying, oh, I think I'm going to try that. That sounds like I could maybe handle that. People who are alcoholics who are on the wagon should not be trying moderation, just to make that perfectly clear. So what I think about alcohol in general, and this is one of the ways in which I disagree with Alan Carr, who kind of rejects even the ability to somebody to get any pleasure out of alcohol and to enjoy the taste of alcohol. I see alcohol as essentially a base pleasure, kind of like any other base pleasure, bodily pleasure that you can experience. I consider it to be something like that. Everyone kind of knows the feeling. You have one or two drinks, you feel that warmth in your stomach, around your whole body. It's nice. You feel a little bit more calm. It's a bodily pleasure, and I put it into that category, even though it's clearly a lot more dangerous than, getting a massage or eating ice cream or having sex normally. But I put it into that sort of category in terms of base pleasures. However, like I just said, it is extremely bad for you drinking alcohol, and that's something that in the next few episodes we're going to be looking closer at, but it's important to say. Alcohol, for all of its reputations, for all that we know about it, it's dangerous and it's extremely harmful. All right, so to wrap up this inaugural episode of the program, we're going to go over the 3 tenets of stone cold moderation. Okay, and these 3 tenets I'm going to be pretty much repeating every episode to kind of, I guess, drill in because I very much believe in these 3 things. So here we go. 3 tenets. Number 1, have an even better social life than you did before. Okay, so with moderation, with not drinking so damn much all the time, you can have a better social life. For me, one of the things that I was afraid of before making these changes in my life was that I thought I wouldn't be able to have fun. I wouldn't be able to party. I wouldn't be attractive to girls anymore. And my life would just essentially be boring. I would become some boring person without the drink. Not true. I found that my social life, I enjoy it more, and it's far more rewarding to be mentally present at all times. So people who, tell you that it's not possible, your friends who are going to perhaps antagonize you for not drinking, because you will get that. You will get some brushback, certainly. That's something that we'll talk about in future episodes. But again, it's your life. You got to stand up for yourself. You got to stand up on your 2 feet and decide exactly what you want your life to be about. So number 1, have an even better social life than you did before. I strongly believe in that one. And for me, that was kind of a revolutionary idea that I found. And completely, the realization of that kind of really changed my life. Number 2, make your own rules and honor them. So I have my rule of 3, okay, which works perfectly for me. It's important for everybody who is going to start this process to create their own rules for themselves. And again, my strong advice is to control yourself and do not make a long list of rules. I would say at most 3 rules. Because like I mentioned earlier, I've talked to people in like Facebook groups, people in sobriety communities, people who have tried to do moderation, and they have these long laundry lists of rules that are very obscure, and it just makes it easier for them to screw up, because it leaves like more room for kind of interpretation, and it's kind of a slippery slope, if you will, right? When somebody's rule is, I can't drink when I'm feeling bad. Well, or I can't drink when I'm feeling depressed or something like that. Or I can't drink on, Friday if the temperature is below 60 degrees, something like that. It just makes it more difficult for people to screw up. So I say keep it simple, make it at most 3 rules, and honor them. Honor those rules. Okay, these are things that you've put into place to help yourself, to change your life. Honor them. At the same time, if you screw up, okay, if you are starting this process out and you have a night where you slip up, or maybe your rule is 2 drinks and you accidentally have 3, something like that, don't beat yourself up about it, because that's not the idea of this. All right, if you're going to make a mistake and then you're going to shame yourself and beat yourself up about it, that's completely counterproductive, and that's not the point of doing this. Honor your rules. Treat them seriously. If you mess up, it's time to reflect. Do not beat yourself up about it. That is doing more damage to yourself, and that's not what we're trying to do here. Number 3, stick to your guns. Mentioned this a bit earlier. What I mean by stick to your guns is you're going to get a lot of peer pressure. Okay, and I think we've all had many experiences with this when people want you to drink and they just can't accept the fact that you're not drinking, right? Could be friends, could be people you just met, could be family members. At a million different occasions, you're out at the bar or something. I don't know, you're at a family dinner. At all times, people, when they find out that you're not drinking, will find reasons to perhaps give you shit. You got to stand up for yourself, right? Simple as that. You got to stick to your guns. It's difficult though. I mean, it's not easy. And drinking is such a part of our culture, so much a part of professional culture now, going out and having drinks with friends, right? Um, After work, going out and drinking with colleagues after work. That whole culture is very difficult for people to kind of reject, right? Because if you're not drinking, you are perhaps indicating that you don't want to be a part of the group, and people will just be opposed to it. A lot of peer pressure. You got to stick to your guns. You got to stick up for yourself. There's a million little strategies that you can do to kind of make fun of it. You can kind of laugh at it, laugh at people. You can make excuses too. You can kind of say, excuse me. For example, oh, today I'm just not. You can just lie. Today I'm not drinking. I'm taking the day off, taking the week off. Because obviously, one thing that I found in this process is explaining that you're doing moderation, right, or that you've stopped drinking for a period of time. Having to explain that to people every single time is really exhausting, and that really dampens the mood. And not everybody wants to hear that, right? So you don't have to explain yourself every time. You can lie. It's your business, right? You can lie. You can laugh at yourself. Oh, I'm not drinking today. Sorry, whatever. To kind of, I guess, deflect those comments. But it is difficult. I'm not gonna sit here and say that kind of defending yourself against the peer pressure is something that's easy. When we were teenagers, we experienced it, and we still experience it now as adults. But number 3, again, stick to your guns. So one more time, just to repeat our 3 tenets, and of course you can find this information on our website or on the notes of the show. Number 1, have an even better social life than you did before. Number 2, make your own rules and honor them. Number 3, stick to your guns. Okay. So to conclude here, this first episode, just want to again kind of piggyback on the idea that there's a lot of different ideas out there. There's a lot of different approaches to this. There's a lot of people who think that their opinion is correct. They're going to tell you that moderation doesn't work. They're going to tell you that they think it's crazy. They're going to say, why are you even trying that? What's wrong with your lifestyle before? Just a million things that people are going to tell you. Okay, when they find out that you're doing this, you need to decide for yourself what you need to do and identify the course of action that you want to take. Obviously, educating yourself and becoming aware of all of the different approaches out there and all the different ideas out there is very important. Knowledge is power. At the end of the day, it's about taking control of your life and deciding what is going to be the best for you and only you. And I think that's a strength of the program and the approach that I'm trying to encourage, is that it's not one size fits all. It's going to be about each individual, again, shaping their new reality as it relates to alcohol. So yeah, a lot of ideas out there. Decide for yourself. So last but not least, let's talk about our challenge for this episode. For each episode, I'll be giving you guys a challenge, a task to do to hopefully keep you on the right path. For this first episode, it's going to be to write your first draft of your new drinking rules. All right, I gave you guys examples of my rules earlier that I created, and right now, of course, I just have one rule. It's the rule of 3. I don't drink more than 3 drinks in a day. So my recommendation is keep it very short and sweet. Okay, I would recommend not exceeding more than 3 rules. Write it down on a piece of paper, write it down on your phone, write it down in your head, and have fun. This has been the Stone Cold Moderation Podcast with Chase Lee. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure to check out the show notes on the description page of this episode or on stonecoldmoderation.com, where you can learn more about us. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and make sure to tune in next time. We'll be talking about consequences, shame, and rock bottom.